Welcome to another podcast of the Riffle series. The Riffle, a podcast series brought to you by 10 Leaves.
Glad to be here.
Usually, when we think about a bank heist, there's this expectation of physical drama.
Right, like the movies.
Exactly. We picture a crew in masks, drilling through 2 feet of concrete, tossing bags of cash into a getaway van.
Yeah, you hear the police sirens wailing in the distance.
The alarm rings, the vault is empty, and it's very clear what just happened.
Yeah, it's tangible.
But then you step into the world of virtual assets and decentralized finance, and suddenly that concrete vault is entirely gone. We're looking at a landscape of digital heists that are silent, they're invisible, and frankly, they're terrifyingly complex.
It is the absolute definition of a modern invisible arms race.
Oh.
I mean, the perpetrators aren't carrying crowbars anymore.
Right.
They are weaponizing code and human psychology from thousands of miles away.
Well, for today's deep dive, whether you are a heavy crypto investor, a tech enthusiast watching from the sidelines, or just someone trying to figure out how to keep your own digital life secure,
Which is all of us at this point.
right, you are about to get a masterclass in modern digital heists. We have some incredibly fresh, very detailed source material guiding us today.
Really fascinating stuff. Yeah.
It's a newly declassified regulatory notice, freshly dated April 30th, 2026, from the ADGM, that's the Abu Dhabi Global Market, specifically their Financial and Cybercrime Prevention Department.
Yeah. And this notice is a direct warning addressed to VASPs, or virtual asset service providers.
So we're talking about crypto exchanges, custodians, digital trading platforms, that sort of thing.
Exactly. The stated mission of this deep dive is to map out the bleeding edge of cybercrime within the virtual asset ecosystem and to decode exactly how regulators are demanding these companies fight back.
And the ADGM, they set the stakes right at the top. They are warning that cyber attacks targeting these virtual asset providers are escalating rapidly.
Yeah, in both scale and sophistication.
We aren't talking about a few lost coins here and there. We're talking about massive financial loss, complete operational disruption, data compromise.
The kind of reputational damage that can end a multi-billion-dollar company overnight.
Just completely wipe them out. So, okay, let's unpack this. Let's look at the mechanics of how these thefts actually happen, starting with the most direct method, which is infrastructure attacks.
The front door, essentially.
Right. If we think about a traditional bank vault, a hot wallet, which is an internet-connected crypto wallet, is basically like leaving your vault door propped open on a busy street.
Yeah.
You're just connecting it directly to the public internet, where millions of invisible hands can jiggle the handle every second of the day.
It's wild when you phrase it that way, but the vulnerability lies in the very nature of how virtual assets are controlled.
How so?
Well, in a traditional bank, if someone steals your password, the bank can still freeze the account, right?
You call them up and hit pause.
Exactly. But in the crypto ecosystem, attackers are hunting for private keys and seed phrases.
And a seed phrase isn't just a password.
No, it is the mathematical master key that generates access to the funds on the blockchain. If a threat actor acquires that key, they don't need to hack your complex corporate firewall.
Oh, wow.
They essentially become you, and they just authorize the transfer from the inside.
But they don't always have to steal the master key, do they? Sometimes they exploit weak internal withdrawal governance.
Poor access management, yeah, absolutely.
Meaning, maybe a developer left an administrative portal accessible without proper authentication. Or, a company's internal controls are just so loose that a single compromised employee account can authorize a massive transfer.
Yeah, without a second set of eyes signing off on it at all.
Which is terrifying. And if the attackers can't steal the funds directly through those gaps, they shift their strategy to extortion.
Ransomware.
Yes, ransomware campaigns are actively targeting the critical infrastructure of these virtual asset providers.
Historically, ransomware was simple. A hacker encrypts your files, shuts down your servers, and demands a payment in exchange for the decryption key.
Just so you can get your business running again.
Right.
But this ADGM notice details something called double extortion, which operates on an entirely different level of ruthlessness.
It's brutal.
It's like a burglar who changes the locks on your house, steals your personal diary, and demands 2 payments.
Right. One payment just to let you back inside.
Exactly. And a second payment to promise they won't publish your secrets on the internet. In double extortion, the attackers break into the network and quietly spend weeks downloading all of your company's most sensitive data.
Customer identities, trading algorithms, internal emails, all of it.
Right, and only after they have a copy of everything do they encrypt your systems. So now they demand those two separate ransom payments.
And this specific tactic is devastating for VASPs because of the unique operational characteristics of the blockchain.
Because it's irreversible.
Exactly. Transactions are cross-border, they execute instantly, and most importantly, they are immutable. They cannot be reversed.
Wow. So unlike a traditional bank,
Yeah, if a traditional financial institution gets hacked, clearinghouses and central banks have mechanisms to potentially halt or reverse the flow of fiat currency.
but in the virtual asset world.
In the virtual asset world, once the blockchain ledger confirms that transaction, the funds are permanently gone.
That absolute finality of settlement makes these direct infrastructure attacks incredibly lucrative.
It really does.
So if hardware wallets and multi-signature vaults are making the digital front door impenetrable, attackers don't just give up.
No, they pivot.
Right. They realize it's suddenly much easier to hack the human holding the keys than the cryptography itself.
Always the weakest link.
Exactly. Which brings us to identity fraud and the human element. The ADGM notice specifically highlights deepfake identity fraud.
This is where it gets really sci-fi. Threat actors are using AI-generated synthetic audio and video to impersonate executives, employees, or even customers.
We are seeing a massive escalation in how the synthetic media is deployed to bypass onboarding controls. I mean, most platforms use biometric verification now, right?
Yeah, you hold up your ID to your webcam, and the system scans your face to match it.
Right, but attackers are using AI algorithms to inject synthetic video feeds directly into that verification process.
They're literally tricking the systems designed to verify human identity.
Which makes me want to ask, if KYC, know your customer processes and multi-factor authentication were historically our gold standard for security, how do we adapt when an attacker can literally wear our digital faces and voices?
This raises an important question about the foundational architecture of trust in the digital age.
Right.
Historically, seeing is believing. Hearing a trusted colleague's voice on the phone means you trust the instructions they are giving you.
Of course.
But when a deepfake algorithm only needs, say, a 3-second audio clip from a CEO's public keynote speech to perfectly clone their voice.
That's terrifying.
It is. Human trust actually becomes the weakest link in the security chain.
Because the tech is so convincing.
Exactly. You can have the most advanced cryptography on the planet, but if a mid-level finance manager gets a highly convincing live video call from their CEO telling them to urgently authorize a wire transfer to a new vendor,
That manager is going to bypass the security protocols.
they absolutely will. The cryptography doesn't matter if the human is convinced to unlock the door.
The human is the back door. And it goes beyond just deepfakes, right? There's an entire ecosystem of deceptive tactics grouped under credential harvesting.
Oh yeah, fraudulent websites, social engineering.
Right, websites that look identical to a legitimate exchange. Or highly targeted social engineering campaigns via email or text and malicious browser extensions.
That's a big one.
I mean, think about how many browser extensions you have running right now to block ads, manage passwords, check your grammar.
Too many to count.
The notice warns that some of these are actually malicious software sitting quietly in your web browser, actively harvesting passwords and seed phrases while you think you're safely surfing the web.
The ADGM focuses heavily on these tactics because regulators recognize a fundamental shift. Attackers are pivoting from attacking the math to attacking the mind.
Because it's easier.
It is significantly cheaper and faster to trick a human than it is to brute force a cryptographic algorithm.
But they certainly haven't given up on attacking the math, have they?
Not at all.
When human deception isn't enough, threat actors target the underlying architecture and the complex rules of decentralized finance, or DeFi. And this starts before the code even reaches the VASP.
Supply chain attacks.
Yes. Walk us through that.
Well, supply chain attacks are incredibly insidious. Virtual asset providers, like any modern company, rely on thousands of pieces of third-party software and open-source code libraries.
They can't build everything from scratch.
Right. So hackers target those third-party vendors instead, introducing malicious code into a routine software update.
It's like hiring a highly trusted security firm to install new locks on your business, completely unaware that the lock manufacturer has already handed a master key to a criminal syndicate.
That is a perfect analogy.
You think you are downloading a necessary security patch from a vendor you trust, but the attacker has already compromised the vendor.
And it's a highly efficient way to breach multiple targets at once.
Because everyone downloads the update.
Exactly. Every company using that software suddenly opens their doors to the attacker simultaneously.
Beyond the supply chain, the ADGM details specific DeFi exploits that are unique to the mechanics of blockchain ecosystems. Cross-chain bridge vulnerabilities are a massive focal point here.
Yeah, bridges are a huge target.
Let's break down how those work. A cross-chain bridge is essentially an interface that lets you move an asset from one blockchain to another, like moving Bitcoin over to the Ethereum network so you can use it in a smart contract.
Right, because natively they don't talk to each other.
Exactly. So to do this, the bridge usually locks up your actual Bitcoin in a digital vault on the first chain and then prints a matching wrapped token on the Ethereum chain.
And hackers are finding flaws in the code that let them trick the Ethereum side into thinking the Bitcoin was safely locked up when it actually wasn't.
Oh, wow. So the bridge just starts printing millions of dollars in fake, unauthorized tokens out of thin air.
Yes. Bridges are notoriously complex to code securely. You're essentially trying to make two entirely different cryptographic languages talk to each other safely without a centralized referee.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It can be.
Yeah.
Any slight mistranslation in the code is an opportunity for exploitation. And then we have re-entrancy attacks.
Ah, the re-entrancy attack. This one is fascinating.
It really is.
It exploits the specific execution order of a smart contract. It's basically a code flaw where a function is repeatedly called to drain funds in a loop before the contract's internal ledger has time to update.
Yeah, it's a race condition.
Imagine going to a bank ATM and asking to withdraw $100. The machine verifies your balance, opens the slot, and hands you the cash.
So far, so good.
But before the ATM's internal computer can process the math and update your balance from $100 down to zero, you use a computer script to hit the withdraw button again and again and again.
Because blockchains process transactions in milliseconds.
Right. You can loop that withdrawal command 1,000 times before the system realizes your account is actually empty.
The logic of the contract is technically functioning. It's verifying your balance and giving you what you ask for, but the underlying order of operations is flawed.
It updates the balance too late.
Exactly. The state of the ledger must update before the funds are released, not after.
But here's where I want to push back a little on the regulatory notice, specifically regarding another exploit they lump into this category: flash loan manipulation.
Okay, let's hear it.
The source material describes this as an economic logic exploit. In a flash loan, you can borrow millions of dollars without putting down any collateral, as long as you repay the loan within the exact same blockchain transaction.
Right.
If you don't repay it in time, the smart contract simply cancels the entire transaction as if it never happened. So an attacker takes out a massive flash loan, uses that immense capital to temporarily manipulate the price of a token across different decentralized exchanges, extracts a massive profit, and repays the loan all within 12 seconds.
Yep.
Isn't that just using the decentralized system exactly as it was designed? It sounds like card counting at a casino.
That's a fair point.
You're just using superior math. Why is it grouped with malicious software hacks?
What's fascinating here is the distinction between a pure code flaw, like your ATM re-entrancy loop, and an economic exploit, like the flash loan.
Right.
You're entirely right. Flash loans use the smart contracts exactly as they are written. They aren't breaking the code or exploiting a bug.
They're just weaponizing the rules.
Exactly. They are exploiting a blind spot in the economic design of the market itself. But from a regulatory perspective, the method matters far less than the outcome.
I guess that makes sense.
If a vulnerability, whether it's a coding error in a bridge or a brilliant manipulation of economic logic via a flash loan, allows a single user to drain millions of dollars from a protocol, it destabilizes the entire ecosystem.
The damage is the same either way.
Yeah. The ADGM groups them together because the defense is the same.
Yeah.
Rigorous pre-deployment testing. Developers have to stop just checking if their code works and start running economic simulations.
To see what happens when someone throws $50 million of borrowed money at their protocol for exactly 12 seconds.
Precisely.
Okay, when you frame it around the outcome and the required defense, that grouping makes total sense. Now, we are going to shift from the threats happening today to the horizon scanning section of the ADGM notice.
The future threats.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This is what regulators are telling companies they need to prepare for tomorrow.
And this is where the landscape shifts from complicated to truly daunting. We are moving past human-directed attacks into AI-driven autonomous attacks.
The notice warns that threat actors will increasingly rely on automated tools and artificial intelligence to conduct the entire cyber kill chain.
Yeah, we aren't talking about a human hacker sitting in a dark room typing on a keyboard anymore.
Right. We are talking about an AI algorithm autonomously conducting reconnaissance, actively hunting for open ports or unpatched software across the entire internet 24/7.
It never sleeps.
And when it finds a weakness, the AI selects the appropriate exploit and executes the attack instantly.
The speed of the attack entirely outpaces human reaction time. By the time a human security analyst gets the alert on their phone, the funds are already gone.
Laundered through 50 different wallets.
Exactly. And alongside AI, the ADGM highlights the quantum risk to cryptography.
Yeah, let's talk about quantum.
They warn that advances in quantum computing could eventually compromise the widely used cryptographic algorithms that currently secure all virtual assets.
But the document itself calls this quantum threat nascent, meaning it's in its absolute infancy. If quantum computing capable of breaking encryption is still nascent, why are regulators telling firms to worry about it right now?
It seems premature, right?
Isn't that a bit like telling a city to draft an emergency defense plan for an alien invasion?
It sounds like science fiction, I know.
Mm.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture of data security, it becomes an immediate crisis.
How so?
In cryptography, there is a recognized threat model known as harvest now, decrypt later.
Harvest now, decrypt later. Walk me through the mechanics of that.
So modern encryption relies on complex math, usually factoring incredibly large prime numbers. For a standard classical computer to guess the right factors and break the encryption, it would take millions of years.
Okay.
But a mature quantum computer processes information fundamentally differently. It evaluates all possibilities simultaneously, meaning it could solve that math in minutes.
Oh, wow.
So threat actors are currently stealing and stockpiling vast amounts of encrypted data. They can't read it today.
But they're just storing it on hard drives for later.
Exactly. The concern is that in 5, 10, or 15 years, when quantum computing matures, all of that stockpiled data instantly becomes an open book.
Passwords, historical blockchain transactions, private corporate communications, user identities.
All of it. If your data needs to remain secure and confidential for the next 20 years, your transition to quantum-resistant cryptography has to start right now.
Before the data is harvested.
Exactly.
Wow. You're not just protecting your users' data from today's computers, you have to protect it from the hardware that won't even be invented for another decade.
It's a huge challenge.
So what does this all mean? For the companies actually operating in this space, with all these massive threats, autonomous AI kill chains, quantum decryption, deepfake identity cloning, we logically move to the ADGM's mandated playbook for defense.
All right, how do you actually fight back?
Exactly. How do regulators expect companies to realistically defend themselves?
It comes down to a philosophy of proactive, risk-based measures. The ADGM expects firms to implement strong key custody arrangements.
Okay.
They specifically mandate hardware-backed controls. This means taking the cryptographic keys offline into physical hardware devices so they simply cannot be reached by internet-based attacks.
And they demand robust withdrawal governance, right? They want to see multi-signature approvals.
Yeah, the multi-sig approach.
So to execute a transfer, you might need 3 separate cryptographic signatures from 3 different executives operating on different devices and different physical locations.
Exactly. It ensures no single compromised employee or deepfake manager can authorize a catastrophic loss.
The regulators also hammer heavily on continuous testing, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. They demand that smart contracts and DeFi protocols undergo deep code audits and penetration testing.
Yeah, using the exact same methods the criminals use, but doing it in a safe environment before the product launches.
That makes total sense. And they expect basic, rigorous cyber hygiene, timely patching of third-party software, continuous network monitoring, and crucially, using phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication that doesn't rely on easily intercepted text messages.
The overarching theme they use is secure by design. They want security and compliance embedded into the foundational architecture of the software from day one, not just slapped on as an IT afterthought once the marketing team is ready to launch.
Right. Security can't be an afterthought.
But there is one specific compliance rule mentioned at the very end of the notice that I really have to push back on.
Okay, which one?
Firms remain subject to the obligation to comply with GEN 3.5. This is a strict requirement to report any material, IT, or cyber incidents to the regulator within 24 hours of discovery.
The 24-hour rule, yeah.
Imagine you are a virtual asset service provider. You are in the middle of an active, devastating hack. Millions of dollars are draining from your liquidity pools. Your engineering team has been awake for 2 days trying to patch the leak. Alarms are blaring.
Doubled me up.
And the regulator forces you to stop what you are doing to file compliance paperwork within a single day. That seems incredibly burdensome and entirely detached from the reality of crisis management.
I get that. It is intensely stressful for the firm experiencing the breach. But you have to look at the mechanics of the broader financial ecosystem.
Okay.
The ADGM isn't demanding a 24-hour notification just to create bureaucratic paperwork. They are managing the systemic risk of the entire jurisdiction.
Ah.
If one virtual asset provider is breached using a novel supply chain attack or a brand new zero-day vulnerability in a common software library,
It is almost guaranteed that other institutions in the network are vulnerable to the exact same exploit.
Right.
Ah, I see. It's about network contagion.
Precisely. The regulator needs that 24-hour visibility to protect the integrity, security, and stability of the broader financial system.
Because if they know, they can warn everyone else.
Exactly. By forcing that immediate disclosure, the ADGM can analyze the attack vector and issue emergency warnings to every other VASP in the region.
Allowing them to patch their systems before the contagion spreads.
The 24-hour rule is about realizing that stopping a single fire from burning down the whole neighborhood is more important than the convenience of the one house that is already ablaze.
Wow. When you frame it as contagion prevention, the strict timeline makes perfect sense. The ecosystem is simply too deeply interconnected for anyone to be allowed to suffer in silence.
Exactly.
This has been quite the journey through the source material today. We've gone from the brute force mechanics of stealing a seed phrase to the psychological manipulation of AI-generated deepfakes.
All the way to exploiting the complex economic logic of decentralized finance and preparing for quantum computing.
It really is an incredible, largely invisible arms race happening right under our noses between cybercriminals and the regulators enforcing these secure by design architectures.
And it is an arms race that requires absolute constant vigilance. As the regulatory notice makes clear, these security frameworks have to be continuously updated and aggressively tested because the threat landscape never stops evolving.
Which brings me to a final thought for you to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive.
Let's hear it.
We talked about that horizon scanning section, specifically the rise of autonomous AI attacks. If threat actors are going to use AI to execute reconnaissance and attacks at an unprecedented scale and speed operating in literally milliseconds, the only logical defense is for institutions to implement defensive AI to counter those attacks at that exact same speed.
Right. Fighting fire with fire.
Exactly. So are we rapidly approaching an era where the future of financial security is entirely removed from human hands? Are we just going to be sitting on the sidelines, watching two autonomous algorithms fight a silent cyber war in milliseconds, simply waiting to look at our screens and see who won?
It's a sobering thought.
It really makes you wonder, as this landscape continues to shift, just how secure your own digital assets really are. We started by talking about how bank robberies used to be physical, loud, and messy. Today, the most dangerous heist is the one you never even hear happening. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.